Well, hello and welcome everyone to another edition of Policy Talks. I'm Al Sanchez and I am excited with some new information. Actually, it's not new. It's old information, but it's being presented in a way that it's kind of new. And the one that gets to do that and who we get to have a conversation with is Mandy Boyle. This is a really unique one because, normally it's some of the practitioners that have been long-term practitioners. They've been using the poly for a long time. So they have lots of let's say poly experience with certain hand versus Mandy's kind of new. So, but this is exciting because this is what I get to do all the time, and that's relate to the physicians and the doctors and learn new things. Hopefully, I can maybe try a few things from the poly world. But it just shows once again that we're all in this together. We're all trying to figure it out. No one has the answer. But if we put all our heads together, then guess what? We can really build a better mousetrap. And with Mandy, just reviewing her slides that she's going to present here, I've already kind of determined that we're probably going to do is a two-part session. We'll see how far we get on this one. But if we have to do it in two parts, we're not going to rush it because the information is that important. I think you're going to be really thankful for what she's put together. So right now, I'd like to welcome Dr. Mandy Boyle. And Mandy, feel free to introduce yourself and say a few words.
All right. Hi. Thank you, Al, for the introduction. So I'm excited to give this talk today. And yes, PolyMVA is a newer product for me, and I'm enjoying getting to use it and learn about the science behind it. It's really a fascinating product for sure. So first of all, I'd just like to share that this presentation represents opinions based on my education, training, and professional experience. The information presented is not intended to replace a one-on-one relationship with a qualified healthcare professional. It is not intended as medical advice, nor does it establish a patient-doctor relationship. The information is shared as a sharing of knowledge and information for educational purposes so that we can all learn. And
nailed it. Look at that.
Huh?
Right, I said you nailed it. Bingo, perfect. So
I read that one.
No, that's all right. Now let's see if we get the screen to share.
Yeah, I'm going to share here and launch it actually in full screen mode. Okay, can you see that okay?
Yep, so now I just put it in display mode, or whichever one you call it.
Okay, great. All right, so today I just really wanted to talk and simplify a key concept about nutrients and toxins and how they interact with the body and how we interact with the environment. So we'll get started. So first,
if you can click the presentation screen, it should blow it up bigger.
Okay, hold on. For me, it's in full screen mode already, so.
Okay, because we can see the application of it. So.
Okay, I'm gonna try to stop sharing and then
do the display.
Well, I can't use the display, otherwise my speaker is not working.
Oh, all right. Well, tell you what, then let me do it for you, and then we'll.
Oh, sure.
Let me do that. Hold on a second here.
Okay. So I was seeing it in full screen mode, so it was interesting that you weren't.
Right.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, there you go. So you just let me know when to click and.
Okay, I'm ready for the next slide. Thank you.
All right, perfect. Let's see. That work?
Perfect. Okay, so I think that in functional medicine and holistic medicine, it's really easy to get really into the detailed concepts. And so I'm hoping today that we can actually kind of pull back from that and just see it from a broad perspective, how nutrients work in the body, why they are important, and why toxins are harmful. In a nutshell, that's it. And then as far as nutrients go, the really main thing behind nutrients, in fact, is enzymes. And I think that as the pictures depict, there's the medical model. There's a lot of people who are on one prescription and then another for symptoms. But if we can get people to be active in their lives, stay busy and moving, interacting with grandkids or doing the sports and activities they love or families, then health is really where wealth is. Okay, next slide.
and I was kind of excited about when we came up with this topic of the nutrients and enzymes, because I think a lot of people think they're two different things, right? That, okay, nutrients are important or enzymes important. It's like, no, they're symbiotic, right? And
Yeah.
the impact, and what I really appreciated, depending on when on your slide presentation, was how the toxins really interplay with that. So, and that's key when someone might be struggling with something. It's not that they're not getting good nutrients. Maybe they don't have an enzyme. Maybe there's some toxin blocking it. So, yep, awesome.
Absolutely. Okay. All right, and so that's just it. Basically, the enzymes are the workers in the body. And the analogy that I like to give is if you have a line factory, like an Amazon factory or something, and there's a conveyor belt, and all of the workers along the conveyor belt are different enzymes. And our metabolism is like that, right? So one enzyme converts a product, passes it down to the next one, and it's converted again. And then each of these enzymes essentially is either building or converting or breaking it down, folding it, changing the shape, whatever it is to get to that end product. And we have major families of enzymes as listed here. And we don't even really have to get into that. The importance of that is that certain vitamins are going to be needed by certain families of enzymes. And the important thing about the enzymes is that if they don't have the tools they need to convert something, I always think of it as like, oh, I don't have the tools, I don't have enough screws to build into this product. That one needs to come off the conveyor belt because it's defective until you can get more screws. So if your vitamins are those screws or the tools, then that is going to be put in a box behind you. And those are the things that we kind of see in our lab work that might build up over time. We look at a lot of enzymes, even in a just like a CMP or something, we're looking at ALT and AST. Those are liver enzymes for the most part. So when we see trends of enzymes going in a certain direction, we can start to identify that maybe there's some nutrients associated with it that are not getting into the cells or getting access to the enzymes. And another thing that you mentioned about enzymes is, or vitamins, like maybe the vitamins are even present. There's multiple levels. One, are you getting enough vitamins? And the answer is either yes or no. But the next in the gut, are they absorbing? And there we need our enzymes too. We need our digestive enzymes from our stomach. We have hydrochloric acid. That's going to activate our B12 so that it's in an active form and we can utilize it, because maybe the B12 is there, but you don't have the intrinsic factor to make it active. Another example would be also HCl is going to help break down. It's going to be the enzyme. Hydrochloric acid will help you break down your protein that you're eating into the amino acids, so that we now have the ingredients versus the actual whole protein, and the body's going to have more access to those amino acids to then build into your own tissues, because we know that a lot of our proteins or amino acids are the building blocks for our immune system and the infrastructure of our cells, and even enzymes and neurotransmitters.
So Dr. Boyle, saying that made me think of a few things. One, on the enzymes for the liver, of course, we look at those enzymes, ALT, and the liver enzymes, and if they're elevated or if they're too low, right? Generally, you find them elevated, correct?
Often, yeah, they elevate if there's either infection or inflammation or something like that. But like I know if AST and ALT and GGT are low, then especially if they're in the single digits, then I'm going to start thinking, oh, well, maybe they don't have vitamin B6, because you need vitamin B6 or pyridoxine to conjugate two amino acids together and build, or also to break them apart. Anytime you have two carbons coming together, you need to have B6 available.
Right. So see, this is awesome, because you're talking the basic biochemistry that I think a lot of professionals may not be thinking about. They know it, but they're not applying it to as breaking down carbon, right? I mean, that's what it's there for. This is the dance that these two things have to do. You mentioned something as simple as hydrochloric acid in our stomach. So think of these individuals that might be having just as simple that they're always having acid reflux, or they're always popping
PPIs.
Right. Thinking that it's acid, when many times it could be not enough acid. And then if you don't have enough acid and your protein's down, you're not converting the B12, you're not doing little simple biochemical things that are happening in your stomach before they even have to get to the small intestine. What do you think's going to happen to the small intestine when they can't get what it needs, right?
Exactly. And the same could be said for, so we have the food going through our stomach, and that's first pass. And as a chiropractor, we are really trained on the nervous system. So that we have the sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight, and we have the parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest and digest. So another thing that I often work with people on is, in fact, stomach acid. I'm not a huge fan of PPIs for that reason. I do find that more people don't have enough stomach acid because secretions from the stomach, from the pancreas, from other areas, peristalsis is that wave of contraction that helps push all of the bolus of food along. But when we're stressed, and we are in a stressed society, we don't go into parasympathetic very well. So we're not secreting our enzymes. So if someone is, for example, on lunch break and they're eating in their cubicle and they're actually not really rested or in a rest and digest state where they're secreting their enzymes, they're salivating, they have good stomach acid and bile and pancreatic enzymes, as well as peristalsis, then they're not going to have the enzymes available to break down their foods because they're in that fight or flight state. So one key that I often give to patients is like, if you are stressed at work, go sit in your car, just be alone, relax, eat, take a breath. Even like whether you're religious or not, like if I think that maybe prayer is before a meal so that the hustle and bustle of preparing the food is done before you sit down as a family and eat. And then you have that sigh moment every time you sit down and you get to dig in, right? It's like that release. And that is that shift to parasympathetic nervous system. Or in Europe, they say bon appetit before a meal. And it doesn't have to be a prayer. It's just that acknowledgement of transitioning from, okay, we're hustling and bustling and getting it all together. And then now we get to eat and enjoy and salivate.
No, that's see, I knew I'd love this just from the perspective of, like you just said, when you take that break, there's a transition. And it's funny, some of my family members make a joke to me. They're like, because I will like take a deep breath, and they're like, oh, he's gonna say something, and I'm like, no, I'm actually just transitioning. Do I sometimes say something? Yeah. Am I thankful for my family being together? Am I thankful for this opportunity? I never. And I got to admit that this is something relatively new in my life. But before I was always that guy. Yes, eating in my cubicle, right? Phone in one ear back in the day, and then sandwich in the other ear because I just had to work too. I had a lot to do, and I never took a break from it. But thank you for that. That's awesome.
You're welcome. And that's another thing. Like, so the vagus nerve, it's really trendy right now, and people are aware of it. It's the 10th cranial nerve, but it is called the vagus nerve, like the vagabond, the wanderer, because it actually innervates pretty much all of our viscera. It helps control our heart rate. It helps control our breathing rate, our peristalsis in our organs. But it is the nerve, the key nerve that helps balance and shift the nervous system from a sympathetic state to a parasympathetic state. So you just mentioned something really key. You pause and you take a deep breath. That's amazing because that's exactly like pranayama, yoga breathing, etc. It's that shift in relaxing your nervous system that really transfers you over into a parasympathetic state where you have in medicine they call it SLUDs. It's like salivation, lacrimation, urination, defecation. All of those secretion kind of things happen when you're in a parasympathetic state. So another thing is gratitude. Maybe that's what saying grace is like making gratitude list is another really good way to shift the nervous system from sympathetic to parasympathetic. So just being appreciative of your food right before you eat.
Awesome. Great. Well, and then that triggers some digestion. Now we have enzymes, right?
Yeah, and then we kind of touched on the stomach enzymes, and that really is digesting our proteins. It's actually our first line of defense against microbial infections as well, which can in themselves produce toxins, right? So having a low stomach acid pH of 2 is ideal. So if you're taking PPIs, you're not secreting the hydrochloric acid, you're blocking yourself from absorbing nutrients, you're taking away your defenses, first line of defense against microbes and germs that come in on food. And then you're just going to be more susceptible to infection and robbing yourself of vitamins and nutrients, which are going to be the tools for enzymes as well. Then after the stomach, peristalsis is going to cause the gallbladder to contract and douse enzymes on the food at the first part of the intestines, and then the pancreatic enzymes, lipase, proteases, and amylase, as well as some others, are all going to come together and finish that digestion, or continued that digestion, right? So if you don't have that peristalsis because you're not in a parasympathetic state, well, one, you're going to have GERD because things aren't moving along. And two, you're not going to have the gallbladder contract and douse all of the food to really break down and emulsify fats. So that's going to be a really key factor for all of those fat-soluble nutrients. You need that bile there. And you need the bile also because it's going to conjugate toxins to hold them in the digestive tract so they don't resorb along the 28 feet approximately of GI tract.
Wow, I'm avidly writing notes on all these things that you're percolating to the top about. No, it makes comments, and I can think of even certain individuals, family and friends that are like, oh, now I know what their concern is. So, which brings me to a quick question. What is the best, easiest, more accurate way to determine whether or not you have enough stomach acid, that you have a low pH?
Honestly, so when people describe their symptoms, well, okay, so if they are not rested, okay, so it would be, let's see, on labs, there's a couple of things. If their immunoglobulins are low, so you would look at albumin and globulin, those are going to be produced by the liver, so liver function does matter. But that's kind of one thing. You can look at total protein in their body to make sure they're absorbing protein. Ideally, total protein should be between 7.0 to 7.5 on labs. So if they're below 7.0, they probably don't have enough stomach acid. If they're above 7.5, they probably have leaky gut, gut impermeability, which is probably tied to poor stomach acid, but all other enzymes being gone too, and too much stress causing the synapsin in between the gap junctions to allow larger particles of food to pass through.
Right. Then that becomes a problem in itself when you get improper digestion. Then now those larger from the leaky gut. So it really does start in the gut, like you mentioned, and there's some real simple things that
stress
people
too.
can do.
I mean, it's like it's like everyone knows it's stress. We know it bothers us, and it seems so cheesy, but even from a very scientific perspective, you can explain away all of the correlations with stress and illness.
Yeah, you really can. As I've grown and matured in this area and arena of health, I used to think, yeah, it was like 10%. Oh, then it was 30%. Now it's 60%. No, you know what? Stress is my one physician friend told me. He's like, it's the one thing you can do technically 24 hours a day, because you're not sleeping, you're worrying, you're running anxious about this or that, and that then creates this snowball effect that then generally adds up as we age. And yet I've really seen it in these younger individuals that were so stressed out during their college and professional early part of their careers that they literally destroyed their gut. And it's like, wow.
Yeah. And at tying that back, that's the nervous system, right? That's fight or flight or rest and digest. And another thing that's really interesting, in school, you learn about how women who are fair skinned in their 40s, either fat or extra fit, like pushing themselves too hard, they are prone to gallbladder problems, right? And that again goes back to stress and peristalsis, moving everything along and then being able to produce enough enzymes. But if they don't, they get gallstones. And that's kind of one of the age groups that gets their gallbladder removed the most. And they are usually running around chasing kids, trying to do their career. They're just stressed. So important to that, right?
Well, it is. And so actually, I have a really good friend that they had removed their gallbladder. So what do you recommend for individuals that do not have a gallbladder anymore?
you really need to supplement with enzymes. You need to, so if you don't have a gallbladder, you still have bile produced from the liver, and it just kind of trickles out all the time. But remember, we have a whole bunch of food passing through with peristalsis. So if you're just trickling a little bit of bile onto that food, you're not going to be emulsifying it. So you might have signs of pale stools, fattier stools, drier skin, because you're not getting the fats absorbing now because you're not emulsifying them. It could be hormones. You might, like a lot of women might think, oh, I'm just going into menopause, for example, or men are having testosterone issues, but you absolutely need to absorb the fats as building blocks for all of your hormones, for your membrane integrity, and then for your fat soluble vitamins as well.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right.
Really simple, right?
You know, at a certain level, yes, right? Most of us, we call that, we call it common sense medicine many times, but that's why I love doing this, to be reminded not only for myself, but for the listeners, and to, to have this again, because it's what I love about how you put it. I mean, even like this chart here on enzymes that I'm looking at, and it follows the tree. There it is. And so, whether it's vitamins, minerals, amino acids, if you know, that's what the MVA stands for: minerals, vitamins, and amino acids. So
I did not know that. That's funny.
So poly stands for the complex, which means multiple. The M for minerals, the V. So that's so.
And awesome. I didn't even know that. And in this slide, it says it's tools: vitamins, minerals, amino acids. That's exactly what I put.
Well, and what you have here again is it's and because of those small molecules, and you have methyl groups, and that the ACOA, that's for acetyl-CoA, right?
Yeah.
That is. Yeah. Okay. So you need those methyl groups to generate the energy to convert. So Absolutely. this is where I can teach you a little bit. This is where poly facilitates the conversion of pyruvate to acetyl-CoA, so that the mitochondria can do their magic. So
exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then in this picture right now, the symbols and the colors, and I got this from Strategene or Seeking Health, Dr. Ben Lynch up in Washington. And so we always hear about people having genetic conditions, and yes, they can predispose us to certain things, but I think that along with our genetics comes inherited lifestyles, ways of eating, stressing, management of stress, etc., right? And so more and more there's evidence showing that our genetics contribute to about 10% of our health, and our environment is contributing significantly more. And so if we think about what we have, our genetics, we have our genes, well, they're encoding for various things, including enzymes. And so in that blue circle there's the gene/enzyme, and that's going to be just one of the many factory workers, right? And then we have our cofactors. That's going to be the tools that the factory workers are using. We have in purple things that decrease activity, that can be toxins, but that can also be buildup of nutrients in excess that signal to the body that either something is off, or there's too much of that, or maybe there's a deficiency elsewhere. And then we have things in orange that can increase that gene activity. Sometimes that can be like caffeine or coffee, or at other times it might be, for example, a buildup of a certain metabolite, like we'll see a little bit later in the next example, but that can actually say, okay, we have so much of this available, this gene now can go faster, right? It has more of the products it needs to convert X to Y.
Right. So if I understood that correctly, is it kind of paired it back to you there? So our genes will get turned on, releasing those enzymes. Now, depending upon the activity of the enzyme, what might drive that? Again, why caffeine might affect someone else, but not really touch it this other person. That's their genes. However, it's going to then turn on various aspects that will lead to maybe a decrease in activity or an increase in that activity of, in this case, the enzymes. Yeah. All right. And so when you have it as the no SMP, that's for SNP data, right? The wild type, the heterozygous, and the homozygous, we're simply talking about the genes and their connection to each other, or how can you better explain that?
Yeah. Okay. So the wild type is going to be kind of the one that is considered the most common and studied. The heterozygous SMP, for example, if it was in yellow, you might have one copy of a gene from your mom and another from your dad. And so maybe your dad had the wild type, but your mom had the slower type. So maybe it's at 20% slower rate, right? And then say the homozygous one, you might be at 60 to 80% slower rate, which means that when you have a gene that might work a little bit slower for whatever reason, you may need to really make sure that you're getting the nutrients and tools available, because if you have the genetics there, but you also have deficiencies because of your stress and not activating the B12 via intrinsic factor, for example, then you're going to have methylation issues down the road because you don't even have the tools there. But another thing is maybe the tools are there, but you have heavy metals, you had mercury fillings at one time, or you've been exposed to lead. A lot of those toxins are things that under decreased activity, the purple one, a lot of those toxins can impede an enzyme as well. And so if all your enzymes are either at a receptor site bogged down because there's a toxin in the receptor site and now that vitamin can't attach there to turn on that enzyme, then it cannot do its job. And then that as well, like homocysteine can go up or something like that in our blood. We might see HSCRP, things, trends of infection, right? Or trends of vitamin deficiencies as well. And that's where we dig a little deeper when we see some of those clinical markers just trending out of normal ranges.
Right. Well, there's a lot of, I like that you said that from a trending perspective, because that's how I like to look at the various tests. Is, very rarely are you going to land on the pot of gold, and this one reading on a test is going to tell you that if you fix that, everything else is fixed. No,
Yeah.
You look at trends. They could be going upwards, they could be going downwards, but either way, when all the other tests come back to say this, and this, it looks like this, but they have sisters, they have other actions that can relate to start indigestion. It start right there the second you start chewing our food. If it's not breaking it down properly, those enzymes can't trigger the next pathway. That trigger the next pathway that set it up for the digestion so that they can be absorbed, so that your cells can do what they need to do. So, and it's not a simple trouble tree, but you have a good understanding of it. Thank you for explaining it that way. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think that another thing other than labs are great for a little bit of guidance, especially when you first start out with someone, but symptoms really are critical. Like if someone's having low energy all of the time, so again, on the comprehensive metabolic panel and their CO2 is at 23, well, CO2 is the output of the Krebs cycle. We have we inhale oxygen and we exhale carbon dioxide, and that is aerobic metabolism. So if you see someone trending low on carbon dioxide, I like a range of 25 to 30. That would be ideal. Well, then they're not using their Krebs cycle very well. That means their mitochondria are not using aerobic metabolism, which is one of the more efficient types of metabolism versus anaerobic, or I mean, there's beta oxidation, but anyhow, so basically, like you can kind of see if someone's not using, like they're saying they're tired and lethargic all of the time, and you see that they have a low CO2 output, then I think, okay, well, they need more nutrients first thing. How can I get those nutrients in the fastest so that you can start having energy? One thing that I do like about poly-MVA is the nutrients also are kind of a mix of lipid soluble and water soluble. So they, I know when I've been using it, I feel like it absorbs really fast in my mouth, almost like a lipophilic formula versus going all the way through digestion. And
oh my goodness, that is, and that's why Dr. Garnett created it the way that it is. This is something he understood, not because he understood digestion the way that you did. He understood it at like a cellular level, right? He didn't think about it to detail out, but it's exactly why there's alpha lipoic acid bound to thiamine, and the other cofactors are B2 and B12 and formylmethionine and molybdenum, and they're not in there by chance. So again, wow, that's
yeah.
I don't think we'd have talked about this before, but you nailed it without even me saying anything.
I like it. I mean, it's like a basic common sense from a biochemistry standpoint, right? It's always kind of back to the basics. Like, how can you get it into the cells and the tissues, and what are all the tools needed? Like, so for example, on this slide that you're at right now, we know homocysteine is a common marker, right? And when it starts to go up, there could be multiple reasons. Often infections, like if you have a gut infection or a parasitic infection or you're sick, then inflammatory cytokines are released from that infection and homocysteine will go up. But we can see the green there. That would be the zinc, the methylfolate, and methylcobalamin, so B9, B12, and zinc. So we have one inorganic mineral, and then we have 2 vitamins. And those are the tools needed. So say you have a major zinc deficiency, that means homocysteine might build up. Or say you have a B12 deficiency, which folate and B12 actually commonly are associated with causing a homocysteine, a high homocysteine, right? So I just think it's really interesting that when you see all the tools that it needs, you need to think when there are things building up in the blood, well, what are the tools? If you get the tools in and it still persists, then you need to dig deeper and you need to go, okay, what toxins are there? And we can see that the MTR enzyme is going to be blocked by nitric oxide, nitrous oxide, lead mercury, hydrogen peroxide, acetaldehydes, which is like cooked carbs or fries or bread or toast or whatever, high SAM, S-adenosine methionine, and then TNF-alpha, which is going to be an inflammatory cytokine. And the beauty of this example as well is we can see if SAMe is high, it's going to slow the enzyme down. So you're not going to convert your homocysteine to methionine quite so quick because methionine is in SAMe. But if it's low, it's going to activate the MTR gene to produce more and draw from homocysteine. So I see patients as well with low homocysteine. And that makes me think, oh, I need to get more S-adenosyl methionine and adenosine methionine in because they are using it up somewhere and they need to find that balance. So low homocysteine is associated with certain diseases, as is high homocysteine, which is more cardiovascular disease and risk of cerebrovascular incidences.
So homocysteine is a good indicator of inflammation cytokines, but coming from wherever.
Yeah.
And they're going to then impact the MTR gene.
Yep, this is just one enzyme, one gene. Like that, I don't know if anyone can see the table behind me, but like it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of enzymes. Probably.
Thank you for bringing that up because I wasn't sure on that slide behind you because those are the pathways, right?
Yeah, Roche it's the metabolic pathways from Roche.
Oh yeah, that's my favorite. I could have that thing on a painting all around my house everywhere. I would.
Yeah, it's a good one. It really is because it has, just like this little picture here, it has all those enzymes and all of the cofactors plus the substrate and what it's being made into. And it really, you can see the fact that it's a giant assembly line and very complex, right?
Right. Well, and the fact that you mentioned zinc, right? And so why is it that when we're not feeling well, like you said, with a bug of some sort that's releasing cytokines, whether that's bacterial or viral, does not matter. Why zinc is so important. So, especially through the last few years of what this world's been through, yeah, zinc is a no-brainer, right?
Yeah, and then also homocysteine goes up with infection and we take zinc, right? Well, maybe because we feel really bad when homocysteine builds up. So maybe that's one part of why when we boost our immune system, when we metabolize out the homocysteine into methionine, we start to feel better because methionine is going to be used in other areas of the body by other enzymes as a substrate in its own right, right?
Right. Yep. Sorry, I'm writing that one down. So. All right. I like this one. So help us understand cofactors and coenzymes.
Yeah, so I keep saying cofactors are the tools and coenzymes are really important too. And this is just kind of a technicality because you really need them both and they're used in similar ways. But basically cofactors are going to be inorganic. So think minerals and ions, right? And then some of the vitamins, they have, there's a vitamin form and it is in that sense inorganic, but then it's put into a compound and now it becomes more organic. So whether it's an inorganic ion like zinc or a more organic coenzyme, so for example, NAD, FAD, those are ones that we all know about that are used a lot, especially in the Krebs cycle. But that's pretty much niacin and riboflavin, and in their organic form, so they become coenzymes at that point instead of just a vitamin.
Right. But I like to explain them when I'm either talking to end users or someone who doesn't understand biochemistry. Like, it can be your offense and it can be your defensive players, but you're all on the same team, right? You have different activities that you have to do, some offensively, some defensively, some special teams, but you have to work together as a team. And when you work together as a team, the cofactors that affect this, well, then these enzymes get triggered to affect that, and they work together to create what our cells need, how our mitochondria work. You know, when I think of the one enzyme, probably my favorite enzyme is CoQ10.
Yeah. CoQ10's a good one, right? And then mentioning about how interactions can happen, or like toxins. So many people are on statins right now, but statins block an enzyme called the HMG-CoA reductase, right? And that enzyme is needed not only to make cholesterol, to synthesize cholesterol, but also to make our CoQ10. And CoQ10 is literally in the membrane of mitochondria when electrons are going through the electron transport chain. And I hope this isn't too specific, but the CoQ10 is one.
Yeah, no, it's perfect. As the doctors always explain it to me, coenzymes keep all the cars on the highway. They're the lanes that keep everybody traveling down. And if you don't have enough coenzymes, cars can just run. Energy can leak right out of the membrane, and it never gets to its end result. So you could be producing all the energy you wanted, but if you can't get it down the highway to where it needs to get to, the coenzyme CoQ10 primarily helps to stabilize that electron transport chain, just like you described. Yep.
Yeah, and then ETS stands for electron transport chain there.
Oh, let's see.
But I don't know why it says ETS. I think I might have done a typo. It should be ETC. And then it's really interesting. I love minerals. I pretty much start all patients out with enzymes and minerals right away. I think that we have reverse osmosis and we filter our water, and we're so worried about toxins in the environment, and rightly so, as we'll see later on. However, we really need to think about getting minerals back in, because another thing is when we are stressed, our adrenals are just running through minerals really fast, and we excrete more minerals in the urine as well. And so water is going to follow the concentration of minerals, including like sodium and chloride and salts. Not all minerals are salts, but salts are minerals. And so if you really want to hydrate someone intracellularly, you want to make sure they have adequate minerals so that the water's going into the cells. Because from intracellular to extracellular, if you don't have enough minerals inside the cell and you drink a lot of water, it's actually not going to absorb into those cells, because it's not going to go into that concentration gradient, right?
Yep.
So not only are minerals functioning to hydrate adequately, but we can see in that table on the right that minerals are going to be very specific cofactors for specific enzymes in the body. So if you have major deficiencies, I know these are just examples, right? But magnesium has over 600 enzymes that it is a cofactor for in the body, and that's huge.
Wow, I did not know that. 600 enzymes. That's amazing, but it also makes sense as to, when you think of magnesium, potassium, sodium, calcium. I mean, those are the four basics for, the osmolarity of how osmosis moves. And are you pulling things into a cell, and are you pulling things out of a cell, which I just want to touch on for a lot of others, because they think that just sometimes pumping all these things into the body is what it needs. It's like, well, not necessarily. Remember, the cell is producing its own, through its metabolic process, through its life process. It's producing lots of junk, lots of trash that has to get out.
Yes.
So this is where cells can actually become quote unquote sluggish or overloaded, because too much stuff is being packed in and not enough stuff is being packed out. So there has to be a two-way street between what goes in the cell, intracellular, what comes out, and what's extracellular. And
exactly.
right. And there's a nice movement to that. So like I said, you don't just drink more water. It can be a factor of the minerals, because that's what creates the osmolarity, the difference, so that water will flow back into something versus whether water gets out of something.
Mhm.
Hypertonic or hypotonic. Right. Are we trying to put? This is where the infusions and the different tools that doctors can utilize in various clinics. Do they understand that? Do they understand not only what you're getting, but why you're getting it because of the state that you're in?
Exactly.
There you go.
I think it's really important too. Like, for example, table salt is villainized, right? Well, it is pure sodium and chloride. And so with minerals, just like we have macronutrients and micronutrients, and macro are like carbs, fats, and proteins. And then we have our micronutrients, which are going to be our vitamins and minerals, etc. I actually think of minerals as macro minerals and micro minerals as well. So our macro minerals are the ones that you mentioned. For example, magnesium, calcium is probably the most abundant. And then potassium and chloride. And those are the major ones that drive polarity across a membrane and open up the voltage gated channels, or ion gated channels, pardon me, and drive voltages across membranes. But then there's also all of these littler ones, like selenium for glutathione is needed, right? And then the zinc for the immune systems, manganese, molybdenum, the ones that we really don't think of all the time. And then another really important thing to remember too is iron, because iron can be in its F2 or F3 state, and we need adequate iron. And I have a lot of patients that are low energy and they're coming in taking iron, but that's not always a good thing, because it's actually, what if you just need all your B vitamins to get your energy going again? But the problem with iron is it in an F3 state is really reactive to tissues around it. And when we see rust, like if we have iron furniture outside and then it eventually rusts, that rust is that F3 state. So it's almost like rust circulating through our body, but very inflammatory and corrosive. And so like balancing iron and zinc and copper, those three kind of really are important to consider in context with one another. They're important. Another one that's not on here is chromium. Chromium is needed to make insulin. So if you have a patient who's diabetic, you need to make sure that they at least have trace amounts of chromium. But what's interesting is there's like different forms of chromium, right? So there's the healthy form, but then there's hexavalent chromium, like in the movie that Julia Roberts did, and the whole community was, yeah, contaminated.
Right. The book, yeah, that was a long time ago. Wow.
Yeah.
No, exactly. I think you touched on a really interesting point, that the way our bodies get these generally chelated minerals that are safe because they've been processed by a plant or an animal versus, something that's just like a piece of iron laying out there in the field. You can't just go chew on that iron, but that iron can get processed by the earth, and that earth can get reabsorbed into the plants, and then the plants can then deliver the iron in a totally different manner.
Beautiful, yeah.
It was much more usable for what we need, and and they play such a key role. I like that, the macro, the micro, micro minerals. It's one of the things that remember when I got introduced to that 20 plus years ago from the mineral perspective, and it was through a product that came from the ocean, and it wasn't because of the calcium and the magnesium. It was all because of the other minerals in it. It had everything you just mentioned, from chromium, selenium, the copper, the vanadium, vanadium, molybdenum. I mean, why is there molybdenum in poly? Well, there's a little reason why. Dr. Grant knew that it is a little cofactor that is triggered there that's necessary from a mitochondrial perspective. So fascinating stuff. Thank you for taking us through that. That is excellent. So.
Yeah, and when it comes to that, it's kind of cool because a lot of salt companies are coming out and realizing this. And I recommend Himalayan salt all the time, because I'm like, the Himalayas were created millions of years ago. And so they have so many trace minerals, but they don't have the microplastics other than through the processing of like factory processing. There could be some plastic contaminants, but there's more and more companies out there that are starting to test for that. But if you're going to choose iodized table salt or some kind of pink salt that's multicolored because of the various minerals that are in it, a lot of them have over 80 different minerals in it when it's coming from nature, like you mentioned, the ocean and all of the other ones. So that's a really cool concept to not villainize salts and really
No.
like realize, wow, we actually need salts. Let's just get it in balance so that our bodies are functioning good.
Right. Excellent. No, Mother Nature perfected this long before we ever got involved.
Yep. Silly us.
Oh, awesome. Well, here's our vitamin slide. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And so we kind of talked about this a lot, and we know that they do help as tools for our enzymes. But then when we have major deficiencies, we all know about scurvy and, our bones are softer. And I like that you mentioned too about calcium as a major one. I have a lot of people coming in from their doctors on calcium because they are getting old and they do not want to have hip fractures, right? And
Right.
I almost always say, stop the calcium. You're actually going to get good calcium if you have good stomach acid. So let's work on your stomach acid so that you're absorbing your minerals really well. But so scurvy is vitamin C, right? We need, our bones are a connective tissue in themselves, and our tendons integrate into the bones. So to have that, they get soft if you have scurvy. Or they bend and they're just not strong enough. So like vitamin D as well, vitamin K, a little bit of boron. Again, there's an inorganic nutrient in there. I'm going to blank right now, but there's just so many nutrients. Oh, strontium is another one. But there's so many nutrients in the infrastructure of our bones that I really don't give calcium for bones. I'm going to give magnesium and all of the other cofactors that maybe someone isn't thinking of. And then I will give digestive enzymes until they can start to regulate their nervous system and get back on track. And then they can kind of wean off of those as we clean up their diet. And that seems to do really good.
Look at that. Simple, common sense, back to the basics of digestion and making sure you have a broad support of nutrients so the body can do what it needs to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I don't usually prescribe just thiamine, for example. No. It's pretty rare. No. I'm going to try to find a supplement that has multiple vitamins in it so that they can synergistically work together with the person's enzymes.
Right. Yeah. And again, that's why Dr. Annett created Poly the way he did it, so it could synergize on its own. And then if you want to build, it's like its own little mini team, right? Between ALA, B1, B2, B12, N-acetylcysteine, formethionine, molybdenum.
It is.
They're already there.
So detox as well with a lot of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on its own, it can do some amazing things. But you build around into more of these B complexes, more of the minerals. Now, like Dr. Antonowitz would always tell me, it's like you need the energy to get the job done. But as you mentioned, the energy without the other workers, without the cofactors, without the coenzymes, without the proteins, without the fuel, the fats, then okay, it's running out of material. You're only going to be able to build, half a house or a house that's really not going to be very well protected or whatever it might be.
Exactly. It's like a car without wheels, right? It's like you kind of need it all, or else it's just not going to be as functional. And some parts are going to be even more critical than others, but they're all going to play a role.
And the funny thing is whether you have $1 million McLaren or you have a 74 Volkswagen or a 1982 Cadillac, guess what? They all work off the same way. 4 tires, 4 wheels, brakes, an engine, a transmission. They all have the same things, and they fundamentally work the same way. And if you can keep that operation healthy, like our body's healthy, then guess what? Even though that car, or even though we may get old, we will still be operating it better than if we just simply forego any maintenance or taking care of it, right?
Well, that's kind of a fun point that you make, right? Because even if it's getting old and whatever. So vitamins and minerals are the maintenance for our bodies. And whenever I get into life hack conversations with people, this is it. Like it really is. I like to hike a lot. I do a lot of Pilates and ski. I like staying busy, and I load up on my vitamins before I do it, and it makes such a big difference on my endurance, and I don't even get sore the next day, and it makes life more fun to not feel that way. And the reason is instead of pulling all the nutrients out of my body, the stored nutrients, I'm supplementing exogenously so that my enzymes are working in full force, and I just get to go have more fun and not pay consequences so much, which sounds silly, but it's kind of true, right? It's an anti-aging life hack to be well nourished.
Well, and it's common sense, and I'm glad you put it like in the manner you just did, because I've always recommended that as well, but I've never put it in the term of a life hack. And when it came to primarily poly in itself, it would be like we tried it with different athletes and different situations, and it wouldn't necessarily, it's not going to make you a superhuman necessarily, but what it did is it, like you just said, in the endurance and in the recovery.
Yep.
You know, he became a friend of mine, and he was training with or supporting the nutrient side from a lot of the fighters. I forget what you call them for
MMA.
and there you go. And so the recovery from there, that's where she loved poly, because the recovery was night and day. You know, the amount of neurological drain that it puts on, physical damage,
Yeah.
brain damage, the constant concussion and hitting, and what the body has to do. And if it's depleted, the recovery time is like weeks out because of the intensity of what that sport does. And so, but she loved poly from that perspective, because that just little dip just what became so much more smoother of a transition, because as you just mentioned, you load up on those things, and you can imagine in a fight or flight, truly, you know, death
Yeah.
type situation, how much resources our body is using in that situation.
Yes.
Yeah, pretty amazing.
Another thing is, like, so you mentioned that it was both in endurance and recovery, but the thing is like when you're nourished and you get to go out and do that, indirectly it is anti-aging because you're out there exercising, right? And exercising in itself in excess is bad because it can cause a lot of free radicals. But if you are mitigating the free radicals, then you are able to exercise more and push your body a little bit harder. So you're actually getting to build your muscle mass for later in life and your bone density and all of that, right? So in that sense, it's not like a total like, oh yeah, I feel amazing because I just took my vitamins. Like, but I get to feel like I go out there and have better endurance. And because of that, my quality of life is better, and I can work without getting sleepy during the day, and my bones are staying more healthy as I age, right? My risk of hip fracture is less because I'm doing those things.
Right. And if you just keep, even if it's 1%, just 1% that you're stopping the degradation of what happens as we age, that you're not losing 1%. Let's just say it's 1% a year. Okay, well, you're 30 and all of a sudden you're 60. You just lost 30%. If it was just only 1% of either muscle mass or bone strength or whatever it might be, so that now guess where you're at versus already having that protected. And that's the thing that I think it's hardest for most people, that on the preventive side necessarily, because I've become a believer in that you know, defense is your best offense, because if you protect about it, if you keep all those things on board, we have no idea that how much vitamin C our body was going to use today. What happens if we did catch a little bit of a bug, and it needed some zinc, and it needed some vitamin C, and it needed some other minerals, and guess what? Our storage wasn't enough, or was out of them. So now all of a sudden it takes that dip, and now to recover that, you know what, we have to get back on board just to maintain, and then we have to restore it. So people wonder why, if they don't feel well all of a sudden, well, why do I feel so tired? And it's going to take 2 weeks, because you were already depleted going into this. And
exactly.
And you just can't. It's not like walking up to the gas station and filling up your car full of tank. It takes time to slowly build these factors and these reserves back up. So, wow, awesome.
And if you don't have, so we store a lot of nutrients in our body, right? Like we store minerals long-term. So you actually don't need to supplement minerals quite so much, but I do like to think about doing it at least on a weekly basis. Or if you're drinking reverse osmosis or distilled water or anything like that, definitely use more minerals because you need to replete them. But then the fat soluble vitamins like A, E, D, and K, they're also going to store in the body a little bit longer. And then our B vitamins, we're going to use up right away. They're just water soluble, and vitamin C as well. Now, vitamin C, humans are, in general, I think there's about 5 species on the planet that cannot make their own vitamin C, and humans are one of them. We actually have to get it through our diet. So we need to get it on a daily basis. And that's why like fresh fruits and vegetables are really good for us. But long story short, if we don't get the nutrition from our diet, we're going to take from the stores in our body and feel depleted really fast. And so something like you just said, it might take 2 weeks to recover, or for the person who's more well nourished, maybe it'll only take a few days to recover from illness.
Right. Well, awesome. Well, like I told you, this time would fly by faster than we would.
It did. I just saw that.
So it's okay. And like I said, we're gonna continue this as part 2 from this section. So definitely wanted to answer some of the questions that some have asked it. So let me get to those and see what your thoughts might be. So do you recommend taking a multivitamin, and if so, more than one time a day?
Okay, so this is all really subjective stuff, but in general, yes. But I also believe in something called the hormetic effect, where if you, it's pretty much you want to pulse everything, right? Because you want your body to be deprived a little bit so that it has little stress, so it wants to store it more. If you always have it there, it's kind of like an ungrateful child. If you're always giving them something, they're just not going to appreciate it, and they'll be a little blasé about it. So yes, I do like to take vitamins. I take them very often, especially the B vitamins, and then the C I try to get more through diet, but every now and then I just take C as well. And then you can take them twice a day. B vitamins can be a little bit stimulatory. As far as multivitamins, I wouldn't say the frequency matters that much, but it does depend on your activities. Like if you're going to do more exercise, that would be a good time to up your vitamins. If you're going to have more stress, or you're exposed to someone who is sick, or you yourself are sick, that's a good time to take more vitamins. But then kind of in between, just really support your enzymes and your digestion and your balance between your rest and digest and fight or flight, your nervous system, because you really want to stress it in between a little bit as well, so that it does want to store the nutrients.
I see. Okay. Excellent.
My personal opinion.
No,
Don't support that.
That activity is so key, right? Of doing something, whether it's working out, whether it's hiking, whatever your hobby is, just move and keep moving at whatever level you can. What do you like as a good vitamin D level?
What do I like for a good vitamin B level? Like intake or measuring in labs?
No, like measuring in labs, so that you want to keep it around.
So this is actually kind of another subject, but when we're measuring, especially like say B12 or folate in labs, we are measuring what's in the serum. And most enzymatic reactions are not happening in the serum. There are some, but they're really happening intracellularly. And so measuring vitamins, Vibrant America is one lab that does have a test that can measure the nutrition or vitamin level in your serum versus intracellularly, but it is just a snapshot in time as well, especially for those water soluble vitamins. So whenever someone does a test like that, whenever someone measures any B vitamins on labs, I think it's really important to have them not take their supplements, vitamins and minerals for 4 days prior, because you kind of want to see what, so that you kind of see what their stores are, and you don't just have inflated high levels. So like someone's vitamin B12 could be in the thousands because they just took their vitamin the night before, and it looks like they have adequate B12, but that's just in their serum, and it doesn't mean it's getting into the cell, and it doesn't even mean it's activated and ready to be utilized by enzymes, right? So it gets a little tricky with that. And I don't, definitely deficiencies, if I see deficiencies, I'm going to treat them. And I will try to do more liposomal formulas, because I want to bypass the gut until I've made sure that they don't have gut inflammation, gas, bloating. Those are usually signs that they have gut inflammation, regular bowel movements, etc. I'm okay with oral. If you do take oral vitamins, I do want people to take those while they're working on a certain disease condition or figuring out what's going on to optimize their health. If they have symptoms, I always have them take it with a meal, because I'm trying to replicate the most natural situation, and then with enzymes, because if they are stressed and not making good enzymes, we're going to cheat and kind of help them out until they can start producing their own enzymes.
And this is both the the digestive enzymes as well as the pre and post, or what do you like there?
Yeah, I do digestive enzymes with hydrochloric acid. That's one of my favorites. And then I also do ox bile. My favorite is Beta Plus from Biotics Research. It's ox bile, but it also has catalase and superoxide dismutase. And I don't know why that one works so good for a lot of people, but it really helps them emulsify their fats, and they see changes in their bowels pretty fast, and it helps kind of jumpstart the detoxification process, because now they are absorbing, or it helps to bind the toxins in their gut so they're not resorbing it, and then it's passed.
Wow. Well, awesome. All right. And then CoQ10, do you have a recommendation as like between 20s and 30s, 30s and 40s as they age? If you are taking a statin, do you do you like the liposomal CoQ10? And if so,
I
is it
do.
100 milligrams, 200 milligrams? What is it?
Yeah, I think I kind of start off with 100 milligrams. It depends, right? So I start to look at their cholesterol, and I think that their cholesterol is a little bit reflective of perhaps how effective their CoQ10 is. The thing is, another like tangent, right? But cholesterol is kind of a more acute phase reactant than is accepted or traditionally taught. And I see like if people have mold exposure, their cholesterol goes really, really high, or it can go really, really low, interestingly. So, but anyhow, I digress a little bit, or tangent a little bit. I usually do 100 or 300. Those are kind of the two levels, and anywhere in between, if depending on the company. And I really like liposomal CoQ10 formulas. Like if I go up to the mountains and I'm at altitude, that is one of the supplements I'm taking. I'm taking methylated Bs, a whole complex under the tongue, CoQ10.
Awesome. Methylated Bs and CoQ10, writing that down. Cool. No, exciting stuff. Well,
And
thank
minerals.
you so much. And, yeah, well, and minerals. Do you like taking just the basic of minerals, like some mag? And how many different types of magnesium are there? And do you like any one over any other?
Yeah. So for minerals, I honestly just advise people to get like a clean pink Himalayan salt and put a pinch in their water throughout the day when they're traveling. It's a lot easier, right?
Right.
You can go to a health food store and just pick some up when you get to the destination, and then keep it in the hotel room or wherever you're staying. At home in my salt cabinet, I have a shaker, and I fill my water bottle, put my minerals in, about a pinch for every cup. But it shouldn't taste salty, right? In general, it should just refill, replenish.
Okay. No, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that about takes us over the time, and don't want to keep anybody longer, but we're definitely going to come back and revisit the rest of these slides. Take 2 or 3 more sessions. I don't mind, because this is great stuff. I love how you put this together. I really appreciate it. I'm just excited at the way you're sharing it and making it easy for others to understand, and myself as well. I mean, I got all kinds of light bulbs going off in my head going, yeah. So, well, awesome. Well, thank you, Dr. Mandy Boyle. Appreciate you taking and making the time to share your experience and your excitement. Great to see that. And I'm excited that you found us and Polly has found you, and now we can take that another further to better assist your clients.
I've been using it, and so it's like I'm new, but it's going well so far.
So far, so good. And we'll keep that ball rolling. If I get up to San Luis Obispo, I'll definitely come in and give a visit.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
All right, you will. Take care. Talk soon. All right. Bye. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time for this another session of Poly Talks, and we look forward to sharing more with Dr. Boyle probably in a couple weeks. We'll schedule it out. I'll send it back out, because she's probably got another 15 or 20 slides here to go through. You can see how unboxing this is just kind of fun for me. So, all right. Thank you again. Have a great evening, and good luck, good health. God bless. Bye-bye.